Economic Hitmen from John Perkins. The U.S. objective is simply to control the economic decisions of a country. The preferred instrument of U.S. foreign policy from 1945 to 1980 was military dictatorships. Between 1980 and 1990, there were two tracks in U.S. policy. One was actually increasing support for repressive governments in Central America and elsewhere. But at the same time, you had a movement in the direction of utilizing debt as leverage, and for the International Monetary Fund, structural adjustment programs became more important in the 1990s. Today, the U.S. prefers to exercise its power through economic channels. It wants a favorable investment economy. It wants to make sure that unions are not strong. It wants to make sure that a country is not diverting its resources to the needs of its people, resources that are necessary for paying debt and doing other things. So what the U.S. wants is control, economic control, and it will use whatever leverage it has. What's happening in Haiti, the other thing the U.S. doesn't want, is a progressive government in power. The U.S. wants a government more valuable to its own interests and power. Holding back the $146 million Inter-American Development Bank loan to Haiti is a way of trying to force a change of government. The United States does not want authentic democracy. It wants democracy within various narrow channels that it dictates in terms of what economic choices are available to countries and peoples. John Perkins wrote in his book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, EHM, that he was recruited in college by the National Security Agency prior to entering the Peace Corps. John Perkins was later indoctrinated and told, quote, U.S. intelligence agencies, including the NSA, would identify prospective economic hitmen, EHMs, who could then be hired by international corporations. These EHMs would never be paid by the government. Instead, they would draw their salaries from the private sector. As a result, their dirty work, if exposed, would be chalked up to corporate greed rather than to government policy. In addition, the corporations that hired them, although paid by the government agencies and their multinational banking counterparts with taxpayer money, would be insulated from congressional oversight and public scrutiny, shielded by a growing body of legal initiatives, including trademark, international trade, and freedom of information laws. John Perkins was hired by an international consulting firm, Chas C. Main Incorporated, or Maine, where his specialty was falsifying economic growth estimates to validate the building of huge infrastructure projects with loans from the IMF and the World Bank. According to Perkins, these loans were used to enrich construction firms like Bechtel and were never intended to be paid back, but instead served to keep the host country in debt to the World Bank. Perkins would meet with leaders of third world countries and negotiate deals that in effect lined the pockets of Perkins' corporate clients and those of the dictator, while leaving the general population in perpetual poverty. Should the leader of the sovereign nation refuse to hand over the resources to corporate interests, that leader would meet with an unfortunate accident, as happened to the presidents of Ecuador and the president of Panama, both of whom died in fiery plane crashes. The income ratio of the 1/5 of the world's population in the wealthiest countries to the 1/5 in the poorest countries went from 30 to 1 in 1960 to 74 to 1 in 1995. By 1990, developing countries had accumulated more than $1.3 trillion in foreign debt. By 2000, 86% of the U.S. Export-Import Bank's $7.7 billion in new foreign export credits and guarantees went to just 10 politically influential U.S. corporations, including Enron, Halliburton, GE, Boeing, Bechtel, United Technologies, Schlumberger, and Raytheon. From John Perkins.